So I will go very quickly through what Tech Bay Area Advocates is for those of you who are new. We are the San Francisco Bay hub of global tech advocates, a private sector-led and pro bono group of over 6,000 tech experts, leaders, and investors in 50 countries. So it's pretty big. There are over 10 hubs under the Global Tech Advocates umbrella, which is on the slide behind me. And we have a few more coming on in 2018. So you can see sort of where we are on the map. And the first and flagship is Tech London Advocates. We also have working groups, as do the others. We just launched Bogota. Paris, Tokyo, and Italy are coming on board very soon. This organization was founded by Russ Shaw, who is a former colleague and good friend of mine for almost 30 years. We worked together at American Express and Schwab. And he is housed in London, where he started this group. Advocates are invited in by other advocates. So it's a bit of a closed group. Potential and prospective advocates are reviewed by the hub boards. And it makes it a very close-knit and group of people who have similar interests. Our mission is to champion, connect, and support tech professionals and entrepreneurs as they grow in their respective fields and organizations. This is accomplished with education and connections achieved through an online proprietary system called Profinda. It's one of the ways we communicate and connect to each other on projects. And we also have public and private events. Our events range from very small working groups, which focus on tech verticals, and you may have maybe 10 people in the room. That just happened with Tech Bay Area Advocates-Turkey, which is one of our latest working groups to come on board with an absolutely terrific group of people. And it's really fun because one of the co-chairs works at Facebook, so we get to go to Facebook. Which is an interesting environment, of course, right now. So the other thing that we do is when people are advocates in, if they do find like-minded advocates, so in the case of Turkey, this is a group of people who really are passionate about bringing Turkish tech professionals over here to help them grow, and they are working on initiatives to that end. Hubs in various areas of the world that you see on the map do focus on improving their own tech ecosystems and connecting themselves to other ecosystems around the world, because ultimately we are one world. And this is a very grassroots movement, if you will, on how we can all work together to help each other and for the good of the overall community. Tech Bay Area Advocates is mission-driven in Tech for Good, where we provide education and eventually opportunities for underserved and diverse youth to pursue their dreams in tech, either as tech professionals or entrepreneurs. All advocates are asked to adopt the ethos of helping each other for the greater good of the tech and overall community, which I mentioned. I do want to mention another event that we have coming up, which will be slightly larger and extremely fun, which is going to be in wine country. We have a keynote from Salesforce. Jonathan Miranda is delivering the second of his keynotes, this time on AI with a blockchain tilt. And we have over 21 CXO, meaning C-level and founder panelists. We welcome the 2018 top female funders of the UK. We are so thrilled they're coming. We also have a delegation from Startup Europe who's attending also, who will be meeting in Berkeley the day before, so they are literally driving up and stopping in to be with us on their way to another part of wine country. So there's going to be a lot of energy in the room. We are meeting at a tech hub in the south of the county, so it's a little closer to San Francisco. And the event is timed to be optimal traffic for those of you who decide to come up and be with us, and many are spending the night. The female founders are spending the night, and so is the Startup Europe delegation. We could not be here without a lot of you in the room, and this is my favorite part, which is extreme gratitude to our sponsors. We exist because of you, because of sponsors, donors, grantors, and a very hard-working pro bono board. Some of our board members are here today. And I'm going to ask you to stand up, or I don't even see you guys, but anyway, so we have Daniel, Alan, Ed, and on our advisory board we have Firuze and Brandon. So you can wave, you can throw something at us, you can do whatever you'd like.
I think we grab the
And he's very classy. So hang on a second. Horace.
Yes.
I want to, hang on just a second. I would also like to thank DocuSign and the DocuSign team, who I've come to know very well over the past month, for hosting this event in terms of offering the space, the mics, the AV. This is just terrific to come into this space and be able to just get going. So here's a mic for you.
Lani. Welcome consuls, and everyone, welcome to DocuSign, welcome back to some of you. It's nice to see familiar faces, more and more of you. We absolutely enjoy hosting thought leadership events like this one, especially international thought leadership events, since we're an international company, and also since this one touches on digital transformation, which is our business. So thank you for coming. A few logistical things. The restrooms down the hall to your right. We'll get questions afterwards, I know it. Also, a lot of people ask us, are we okay to tweet out and post on LinkedIn? We love that, absolutely, go ahead. Hashtag DocuSign or @DocuSign. We thank you for that in advance, we really support that. And last but not least, how many here of you are DocuSign customers? Thank you for your business, thank you so much. For those of you who are not, we're happy to offer a 1-year complimentary subscription. It's a $480 value, so if you're interested, come and see Jonathan or me afterwards. We'd be happy to share that with you. So thank you so much. Welcome again.
Thank you, that's a wonderful offer. We love DocuSign, it makes everything so simple. A special thank you to our sponsors over the past year and going into 2018 and 19. Athmeter is an analytics company run by the developers of the first search engine in Turkey, Firuze and Fethi Gökçe. I hope I didn't butcher your name. Am I getting better?
Of course, always. Thank you.
If you need any help with analytics or website building, they have another company as well that does that, and they redid our entire website in record time last fall after the fires, which we greatly appreciate, and we're very excited about that. Sonoma Media Investments, so someone will be here very soon. This is a group of private investors which owns the North Bay Business Journal, Argus Courier, and the Press Democrat. And yesterday, only 24 hours ago, the Press Democrat won the 2018 Pulitzer Prize for their coverage of the Sonoma County fires. So there's a lot of excitement going on in the county right now. Salesforce, thank you Brandon, who's in the back, who's on our advisory board, for helping provide sponsorship, a lot of content curation and speakers in 2017 and 18. Pennington Manch, we have James and Maya and Kim there, and I hope I haven't missed anybody. I'm looking around. They have been with Global Tech Advocates from the very beginning, when it was Tech London Advocates, seeing it through, worked very closely with Russ on the licensing agreements. And I remember one afternoon at Pixar, I took James to Pixar with me for a tour of fun things like The Incredibles and Monsters, Inc. And he gave me his vision for Tech Bay Area Advocates in the parking lot. We stood there for an hour, and I really realized how big our organization is going to be very soon, and it is. We in under 18 months have almost 600 on our list. Soma Living Village is not here today. They are actually in Milan at Design Week. Rough, that's really rough, I know. But they are a One World Planet, the only one in North Bay, have won 10, maybe 15 awards for their tech hub in Sonoma County, and they join our list of sponsors and a beginning of a great relationship working with getting startups and scale-ups up there. How many of you would like to have a hot desk or maybe an office up in wine country to go whenever you wanted to? Yeah, that's pretty easy, isn't it? Sonoma State University continues to work very closely with us, as does Stanford and now Berkeley through the delegation coming up in May. But the School of Business, Education, Science, and Technology is continuing to be with us at our May event. in wine country. And Bill Silver, for those of you who remember, who had a very large role at our last large forum in wine country, has done one of the biggest pivots I've ever seen professionally. So he said, I have taught, I love to teach, I have been a dean for 20 years, I've raised $22 million for the university, and he is now the CEO of CannaCraft. So he is now in Cannatech, so cannabis technology. So he will join us at some level, so there you go. Thank you very much to our esteemed panel that is in front of me. Henry Jose Lopez Gonzalez, thank you for everything that you do for us. We have a great relationship with Ursula Rojas and your team, who's phenomenal. Rana Sakar, welcome again to the Bay Area, and we look forward to continuing. You too have a fantastic team. Thank you, Eves, and everybody from there. Andy Whitaker has been with Tech Bay Area Advocates from the very first launch event that we had at the Caper Center for Social Impact. So thank you for being here. He stepped away from a busy schedule and is going to talk to us about Brexit. And I hope I don't butcher it. Frank McConaughey. Did I get it right?
You got it right.
I got it right. Sorry, I almost went over that. He is the CEO of Ramsey Highlander, which is an ag tech company in Gonzales.
Yes.
But no relation to Hemi.
No.
Okay, so he is the voice of the entrepreneur, and it is our fearless leader, Russ in London, who really wanted to make sure that your voice was represented here. So we're happy to do that. And last but not least, it is my absolute pleasure to introduce, to my right, Sean Randolph, the Senior Director of the Bay Area Council Economic Institute. It is a very well-regarded think tank, as you know, where he served as president and CEO from 1998 to 2015, so quite a long run. Dr. Randolph previously served as Director of International Trade for the state of California. He directed their international programs to stimulate exports and introduce California companies to overseas markets. So he's been in this field for a really good, healthy time and can tell us.
Looking ahead then to what we expect to be sort of parts of that final deal, the UK has made a number of points very clear. We are leaving the European Union. I still get asked a lot of times whether it's going to happen and whether it will. I can assure everyone that the UK is on the path to leave the European Union. For us, that means recognising that we're stepping out of the four fundamental freedoms that make up the European Union, that will give us back control over issues of immigration, but will also mean that we're outside the single market. It's also recognising that we will no longer be under the sort of ultimate jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice. So for those who look at the issues of sovereignty, it's about returning power to the European Parliament and to the UK Parliament and to the UK courts, who will be the ultimate arbiters of decisions affecting the UK in that regard. Other than that, our ambition is to have the closest, most ambitious, most wide-ranging agreement with the European Union. We want the European Union to be very successful after we've departed. We want to have and maintain a very close relationship with the European Union. We think we can be very ambitious in the proposals as we look towards that. But also, we see it as a chance to become a champion for global free trade. So this is not about the UK cutting itself off from the world. This is about the UK seeing opportunities for further and more free trade agreements with parts of the world that the EU doesn't have at the moment, or the EU is struggling to reach agreements with. And that includes the US. We definitely see great potential there for future trade negotiations, trade discussions, and opening up opportunities that come from that. I think that's where I'll stop short, because I know there'll be lots of questions and lots of interest in what my two colleagues here have to say as well.
Great. Rana, we'll go to you next. So you're actually a member of the negotiating team for Canada on Nafta, so maybe a particular level of insight. Tell us a bit about what's going on now with Nafta.
So maybe I could start a little prior to that, and thank you again for the organizers here. This is terrific, and it's apropos in some ways that we're having this conversation with a kind of tech housing here, because part of the atmosphere I would start with is that we are, and most of you will acknowledge, and our party too, the fact that we're in the midst of a significant revolution that is changing traditional ways of business, commerce, enterprise, notions of sovereignty, and many of the precursor reasons for why, for instance, the Brexit conversations are happening in the world are very similar to many of the themes that we're seeing, in many of our countries. And it's part of that is that we are all at a moment now we're relitigating the reasons for trade. We're having to make pretty essential arguments about why we do trade. What's the importance of it? What are the kind of mechanisms that are best suited to pursuing trade? And so a lot of the post-war institutions that we grew up are, for forever and a day, were the substrate on top of which everything else sort of existed, are now being called into question. And so part of the discussion around NAFTA was always like, well, why are we having this discussion about NAFTA? And we would say to that when the government in Canada was elected in 2015, when the Trudeau government was elected, but also elections here in the United States and potentially in Mexico as well, was there needs to be a re-look at some of these trade arrangements and trade negotiations of a prior era. And rightfully so, it's been 25 years since we've been at the table, and that was, in an era before Facebook and Google. It was an era, that had a very different balance of power in the world and different types of trade arrangements in the world. And so we went into this with this idea that let's modernize NAFTA. And for that, what we meant was our Christian Friedland, who's now our Foreign Affairs Minister, made a big speech almost a year ago now, that basically said, look, these big themes that are happening in the world are happening, but Canada, one of the things, the objectives that we're going to take to this is to remain open and to use diversity as put that into the store window and to use that as one of the great powers in this next sort of trading arrangement, and also to where possible pursue open markets, but also to look closely at the way in which existing market arrangements have been working for us. And we're now well into Table 8. I'm part of, as Sean was saying, I'm part of what we've got a group of 13 advisors to the trading. I don't play a trade negotiator on TV at all, and there's there's this whole group of trade negotiators who are exceptional at what they do, and they're well at the table. And and what we do is we provide advice to that group, and from a variety of different perspectives. And so there's political people on that, there's business associations and business groups on that. And what I could say is that it's been there are probably two elements of this negotiation. There's one that you see in the press and that's reflected out there that is what I would call the political atmospherics. And it's very similar to any other negotiation. We recently did one with the EU, which had a very similar dynamic, although it happened in a much longer period of time. But there's the atmospheric, which is, goes around the 8 rounds that we've had. And we started off with, people coming to the table with their various proposals, and the U.S. maybe, holding back a little bit. And I think that now, coming into sort of the 8th round in that atmospheric conversation, I think everybody is now declared it at the table, and there's a very constructive dialogue that's taking place. Let me step back. The second part of what's taking place, and I think this is the thing that you don't typically see, and which I've been deeply impressed by, has been the kind of professional level of negotiation that's been taking place. And those professional tables, the 20-odd professional tables that are taking place in the NAFTA conversation, they've been actually making some pretty decent progress. And so I think that what typically happens at this stage in a negotiation, of course, there are some probable, deadlines with the Mexican election, with other big events that might condition the conversation. But then you start to see these two conversations start to converge. And we're hopeful. I mean, there's 4 or 5, and we can get into them. Some major topics that are always in any negotiation going to be difficult. But with the right will and with the right atmospherics at that table, I think we might be able to see progress. I'll leave it at that.
Great. Gavin.
Yes,
Mexico.
thank you very much. Sean, Lani, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be with my colleagues and my friends. It's a great opportunity. So, well, let me share with you. I remember that I got an invitation to be a speaker at the World Affairs Council. It's 9th of November of 2016. And I asked my capital city if that was a good idea, and they told me, yes, of course, go ahead, it's going to be okay, perfect. And then the election happened, and I went to that room the day after to the World Affairs Council, and the room was full with tension, with a lot of tension. So I practiced my best jokes and everything, so that's just to liberate pressure, whatever. And that happened a year and a half ago. And today, when there's a panel and we have to talk about the relationship between Mexico and the US, these are good news. There's no more tension in things that have to do with cooperation in trade. There's no tension in things that have to do with cooperation in security. We have done that all the time pretty well. And we do have a lot of issues that have to do with migration and human rights and things like that. So I just wanted to share that with you to let you know and understand that what is happening now with Nafta is good news. But this is not for free. This is not. We cannot take this for granted. In January of last year, I was invited to be in a panel with Brandon Lee, the former Consul General of Canada here in San Francisco, about Nafta. And I called my capital city and I told them, you have to bring an expert in Nafta because this is very complicated at this moment. There's a lot of tensions in January of last year. Now, the Secretary of Foreign Affairs of Mexico is a foreign officer or official that has been the most times in the White House in this year and a half. Every 15 days he has been there. So this is not for free. This is a federal administration that in the US that they went out of the TPP, they went out of the climate change agreement, they went out of the global migration agreement, they went out of UNESCO. So they don't really like multilateral things. But after a year and a half, we still have Nafta. And I agree with Rana that we are in the path to have a better Nafta. Mexico has done a lot of things in the past 6 years to get into the fourth industrial revolution. We opened our telecom market. We connected more than 250,000 points in Mexico to the internet. We opened an open source of internet in the whole country. We have created new institutions for entrepreneurs, for a digital strategy. It's an office that depends directly from the Mexican president. So I am very glad to have this conversation in this place also and about the digital economy, because at this moment I think that the negotiations of Nafta are going very, very well. As when I was saying, we are just finished the 8th round of negotiations. I think that we saw very important opportunities of reviewing all these agreements in things that had to do with energy, things that had to do with telecom, and things that had to do with innovation as well. So I think that now the discussion is mainly of what is going to happen in the following weeks. Are we going to be able to close the agreement on May? I think that we had very good messages from the Prime Minister of Canada, from the Vice President of the US, and from the Mexican President last week from Lima, Peru, that there was a discovering of the Americas. And we really believe that maybe May there will be important news and we might have the agreement settled. And of course, then we have to see what will happen with the ratification of the agreement in our Congress or the Parliament. And in our case, the Mexican election, the general election, is going to be in July. It's going to be a great election, the most important in our history. And the new Congress in Mexico will take place the 1st of September. So we still have, with this Congress,
Great, so if we focus for just a moment, we'll talk among ourselves for maybe 5 minutes and then open it up for you. Focusing on the tech and the entrepreneurs and the innovation side of the story. Andy, looking at London as a really Europe's leading technology center, leading center for venture capital, #1 place for entrepreneurs, primary base for US corporations, financial and otherwise, basing into the continent. It's really enjoyed a preeminent position, a unique one in Europe for all of these years. That could change, or maybe not, but some of the points of concern that I hear are around, well, a lot of EU money has come into UK universities to support scientific research. That there's a lot of EU money from the European Investment Bank that comes into UK venture capital companies. And of course, there's more venture capital in London than anywhere else in Europe, but a not a significant part of this actually funds from the EU. And then on the startup side of it, there seems to be questions. I talked to some of the younger startup people in London about, do they want to be in the UK in the long term? Is it still a welcoming place for people from other countries? And then we hear stories about large institutions, financial ones, not leaving London, but kind of diversifying where they're putting different functions, moving some stuff to Frankfurt or perhaps other places. So those are all points of concern that many people are watching. On the other hand, London is London. It seems no less dynamic. There seems to be no less venture investment today than there was a year ago. So what do you expect will be the track for those issues? Looking at it from the standpoint of large American companies that may be based in London for their European operations, but also smaller tech companies that are really relying on venture funding and kind of this really rich human capital base that the UK offers.
So, I think that's a great question, and it covers a lot of different areas. So, I'll try and pick up some of it. If I don't get to all of it, then do come back. I think I'll sort of start by echoing something that you were saying, which is, we're super proud that the UK generally, and not just London, but London is obviously very well known for it. We're very comfortable saying it's a great place to grow and start a business, and that is not just for any one reason, but it reflects a whole range of reasons, particularly around the sort of confidence in the rule of law. For US companies, there's the language issue, there's recognising the talent there is in the UK. We're very proud of our phenomenal sort of university network and the talent that comes out of there from the whole world. And I think this is a really important issue that we'll keep coming back to through the Brexit discussions and through everything else. This is not about the UK trying to cut itself off from the world. It's about recognising that the UK plays a part across the entire world, and while there will be changes specifically in terms of how it relates with freedom of movement from the European Union, we also see London particularly as a global hub, so whether it's people coming in from Asia, from Latin America, as well as from closer to home places like Israel, and the cyber security talent from there, or Estonia or somewhere like that. And we're super confident that that will remain a very strong draw in the UK in terms of the sort of ease of doing business there, the phenomenal wealth of talent. You are right. I don't think it's any surprise that companies that use the UK as a base for the European Union are looking at what their operations look like and are definitely putting some of their investment outside. What we're not seeing, and what some people have predicted, is people wholesale withdrawing from the UK. Again, I think it comes back to reflecting that actually the UK as a market is still talking about the 5th largest economy in the world, as long as California doesn't succeed. We're talking about a big market generally. You're talking about a very digitally savvy population. I think the UK per capita of the big countries in the world is at one of the highest levels of sort of digital saturation. People using online businesses, people shopping online, people being very comfortable operating online, which again goes back to why is this a great place if you're a tech entrepreneur. it's really interesting. I've just come from a conversation this morning where we were talking about cybersecurity and the experience and expertise that we've got in UK companies, but also recognising for them that actually if they want to be a global player, they do need to be thinking right from the outset, how do you get a footprint not just in the UK but globally as well. And I think that's where we look ahead, and what we on the UK side must get right as we leave the European Union is absolutely making sure that we remain incredibly open to the world, both for trade and investment flows, and retain both being a great place to do business and a sort of global magnet for talent. And those are the big ones that we have to get right, but they are absolutely at top of mind for our negotiators, for the Prime Minister. She's been very clear on this right from the outset, that we have to continue to be a global magnet, and we have to continue to invest and support in innovation and technology. The final thing I'm going to say, which we have just launched, or relatively recently, our industrial strategy, which is not about trying to sort of pick individual winners, but it's about identifying. We've identified 4 what we call grand challenges of how the world is going to change over the next 20 years, and recognising that government with civil society and crucially with business need to come together to address some of these challenges. I think what Rana was talking about in terms of the sort of revolution that we're going through is very real. And government's got to do its part to keep up and make sure that the regulatory and legislative environment gets that right balance between supporting innovation, but also bringing the population along with it, and recognising that we need to make sure that the benefits of technological change are spread very broadly, and people wherever they are, either geographically or on the income level or on the education level or whatever distinction you might want to use, are all seeing the benefits. And when we talk about these 4 grand challenges, they are first of all around AI and data, the sort of transition to an economy based on artificial intelligence, where artificial intelligence is a very big player. Secondly is around future of mobility, so all the different aspects of transport you can think of, but particularly obviously people are focused on autonomous cars and what that might do to smart cities and city design. The third area is around recognising that we've got ageing societies, particularly in the UK and some of the other sort of mature economies of the world. So how does healthcare change as we go ahead? And then finally, it's recognising the sort of clean growth agenda. So obviously the UK is going to invest very heavily in supporting clean technologies. We're a leading player in the offshore wind environment, for example. And we think getting these things right, having those discussions, not just in a very narrow sense, but broadly, need to happen as we watch these changes come through.
Great, thanks very much. Rana and Gemi, keeping on this entrepreneurial focus for a moment, I think of things that would affect young businesses, especially in technology. I think of IP protection, cross-border movement of data, and of course there's all the supply chain issues that are involved in NAFTA. So you both mentioned modernizing NAFTA. So could you say something about what modernizing NAFTA means in terms of things that were really not on the table 25 years ago, or maybe perhaps addressed 25 years ago, and we have a different kind of technology economy now than we did then. So where do you see the negotiations going in terms of modernization and technology? And would invite you to jump in on this too, Frank.
Just briefly on that, in a way, I identify with many of Andy's comments. I was just thinking back to about 20 years ago. I used to be on stages in London talking about the tech ecosystem in London and what actually made that place great. And it was a lot of the connectivity, diversity, the actual connectivity between and just the density that took place in a city like London that made London great, and will continue to make London great. But we thought a lot at that stage about what actually made tech ecosystems work and what made new economies work and how new cities were competitive with one another and how they were engines of their economy. And to an extent, it's very relevant to the conversation around NAFTA, because I came to the NAFTA table thinking, like a lot of tech folks, like, how relevant really is this economy that we're working in? Like, we're working in data, we're working in, a system that is, unambiguously global, that doesn't really, it's not about moving widgets from place A to place B for the most part. And so how are these people in Washington and Ottawa and Mexico City, how do they really impact my life out here in the Bay Area? And so with that lens, we said, well, let's apply a lens to NAFTA and say, well, what could be benefited from that? IP protection, for instance, which is historically being a kind of a purview of large tech companies and large pharmaceutical companies and others who built a kind of a broad jurisprudential backing of what global IP protection was, and it goes. This is a 100, 150-year-old sort of sets of regimes around intellectual property. That required a little bit of updating, and from our perspective in Canada, a lot of the agreements globally were, and NAFTA potentially as well, was leaned too far to protect established interests without enough protection for the entrepreneur. And so we wanted to stop things like patent trolling and forum shopping for people looking for different forums to go to court to get IP protected in, and things like that. So there are some very concrete provisions in the NAFTA negotiation that whether tech folks know it or not actually really impact the way that they're likely to go about doing business. And so there's also this other broader housing that is not just NAFTA, but we talked earlier, it's about TPP. It's also about how this sits into the new sort of GDPR legislation that is taking place in Europe right now. Which all of this will, at some stage, organizations are going to have to design towards. And so there are a number of provisions, and it's not just NAFTA, but NAFTA particularly right now in the conversations that we're at right now, that are going to have to reconcile with this new tech ecosystem. The final point I'll say on this, though, is probably the most important and under-discussed aspect of NAFTA, which is really important, is that there are literally tens of thousands of Canadians and Mexicans that are the backbones of many of the organizations that are sitting within you can swing a dead cat and sort of hit from this building right here, that will be dramatically impacted.
And of course, protecting IP is also very important for us. We know that it's very sensitive. And actually, our Institute for Intellectual Protection in Mexico was born thanks to NAFTA, among other institutions in Mexico that were born thanks to NAFTA many years ago. And the other thing that I would like to share in this new philosophy is that, and what the things that are going on and happening is that, for example, thanks to the open trade that we have now in some issues like telecom in Mexico now, Carlos Slim is not the richest man in the world since some years ago, but that is because we opened our telecom market. And now AT&T came to Mexico, and now Carlos Slim is having competition. So we feel very proud that he's not the richest man anymore, because he now has competition in sectors like that. And now, finally, what we are doing in the Medical Consulate is also that we are collaborating with the Silicon Valley, and that's why we launched that Tech Visa program that we have. And it's just a program to collaborate, not to take conference or whatever. So I think that is very important, and I think that Frank maybe can tell us something about it, of the new chains that we can develop, because there are not only manufacturing chains, but also chains that have to do with intelligence and innovation. So what we're seeing now is that many companies here in the US are hiring engineers from Mexico. We're seeing that companies from the Silicon Valley are putting in Mexico their R&D centers. And what we're seeing is that some companies are sending, with our Tech Visa program, sending their engineers to work for them, but from Mexico. So an engineer that wins here $7,000 or $8,000 per month, he will be expending half of his income renting a tiny little space somewhere here in San Francisco, but with $1,000 he could be living in a huge house in Puerto Vallarta, you know, with these views and something like that, with a sea or whatever, and through them, they're working for companies over here. So that's why we created that. You have to be working for an American company. It doesn't matter if you're from Taiwan. Actually, we're going to have an American citizen that was born in Iran. He wants to open a fintech in Mexico, and we're going to help him to do that. And the thing is that you have to pay your taxes in the US. We don't want the taxes or the companies. We want the minds to work and have a beautiful life of saving and quality life over there, but working for the American companies. So those are one of the changes that we're seeing in a new mindset.
Terrific. Frank, any thoughts?
Well, actually, you touched on something real important. Companies like mine were developing a lot of automation and robotics in the area of mechanization to harvest crops. And what we need are the programmers to write the code. And I would definitely be looking for someone maybe living in Guadalajara that I can contract to simply do what I need done. And it would be a lot cheaper for me, to be honest with you, than paying a tech worker up here with the wages demand that come out of Silicon Valley are scary for a company like mine. And the cost of housing is scary. Even where I live in the Salinas Valley, we have a lack of housing and it's very expensive. For the migrant farm workers down there, it's crazy. Companies like Tenemer and Anil have actually built cities of 800 units housing for their H-2A workers. So they bring them in, they pay for their transportation, they house them, they give them food to live, and the housing is brand new. I mean, I would live in one of those houses. And in local populations that wants to go work for like Tenemer and Anil, they would pay $197 a month to get one of the units. Other companies have come on board, like the Nunez's and the Rodriguez's that own Foxy Foods. We used to see that label too. They're building these type of communities now for their workers. So if we can bring people up or people down, we need to house them. We need to have them be part of the community. They do go out in the community. They do shop for clothes and food and so forth. Many years ago, I used to tell people about the farm worker. I don't know how many people in this room know it, but an average strawberry picker that works for a company called Driscoll's, which is the biggest in the world, he's making $35 an hour picking strawberries. Now, some people think they're only out there making a minimum wage. So they're highly paid, they're highly motivated to come up and work, yet we can't get our own domestic kids or young workers to go out there, even out the unemployment lines, to go work for a wage that they've never earned before anyway. So it's very tough, so we need to bring the people in. For me, I want to outsource. I talked to the ambassador to Mexico a few years ago at one of the Western Growers meetings in Washington, D.C., and he told me, he says, Frank, we're looking at healthcare field. They want to expand healthcare down there. They want to build the hospitals. They want to bring the doctors in. So they want to import our technicians as much as we would like to have your technicians and scientists be working for us remotely. I have a nephew that just graduated medical school, and he's already frustrated practicing medicine here in California. He's looking to get out of the state. It's a problem. So where are those future workers coming from? I'm looking at Mexico not only for tech workers, but I'm looking at Mexico for the trades. We have no trade schools left. High schools here in the country, they're gone. When I went to high school a long, long time ago, we had drafting, electrical, automotive, wood shop, metal shop, all those trades for kids. They could go in and find something they liked. I mean, I took drafting and mechanical engineering. I became a mechanical engineer. A friend of mine, he took electronics. He became an electrical engineer. Another friend from high school, he owns a metal shop down in Orange County. What does he do? He builds these high-end fancy cars that you see on TV. He's very successful at it. So young kids coming out of school today, they're in America, the problem is They're all told to go get a 4-year degree, yet they can't compete. They can't pass scholastic tests, the SAT, the scores are way down. They have no shot to get in. So we have to build that up here in America. I'm looking at Mexico. I want to bring those workers up. But I also want to do the distance program where I
Significant component of the discussion.